Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Building a Better Future, stories from climate tech founders. This is our last episode, and over the last 8 weeks we have spoken to 8 different founders who are all still in those exciting but still very challenging early years of their startup life. We've been exploring with them where their love for sustainability began. We've been going through their journey with them on how they founded their company, and discussing all of the challenges that they've faced in those first few years as a founder. My name is Cherry. I'm the owner of Above and Beyond Recruitment. Our business partners with climate tech startups, and we help them to develop their employer brand and then grow and scale out their product and engineering teams. And if this is your first time listening to us, then please go and check out the rest of the series. All of the video recordings are on my LinkedIn page, and there is also an Above and Beyond YouTube page, the link to which we'll share in the comments, so you can go and watch all of those. And we've also got a podcast version available, which is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Acast, so go and search for us on there. Today, we are joined by our 9th and final guest, Rebecca Thompson, founder of Ecosy Travel, a sustainable travel booking website. Their aim is to provide environmentally conscious travellers with a seamless and easy way to book low carbon travel. Rebecca herself has a background in economics, policy and international development, and has spent the early part of her career working in policy, whilst originally launching Ecosy Travel back in 2018, and then about a year ago, moving back to sort of full-time focus on the business. So I'm really excited to welcome Rebecca onto the show. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming. So I always kick off on all of these by going back to the beginning and kind of exploring those earlier years of your life and seeing where that kind of inspiration, I suppose, came from. Either to want to start your own business, that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, or that kind of passion for sustainability and kind of, you know, fighting climate change in some way. Can you kind of pinpoint where the inspiration for one, either, or maybe even both of those things you think came from?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of sustainability, I suppose to start with, I kind of grew up in a household where it was always kind of as standard that you had to care about this stuff in a way. My mum was very passionate about sustainability herself already. It was sort of something where it was sort of like, don't have big baths, always turn the lights off. It was kind of at the forefront that it was, it's just something you had to do. You had to sort of, be mindful of these things and, you know, do your bit. So it just kind of got drilled into me a little bit. I think some of that stuff then just becomes natural. You just kind of expect that you've got to do something. And that just kind of grew. I think it was always there. I always wanted sort of in my career to do something that had a social impact. I think I was sort of exploring for a while exactly what that would look like. And yeah, I think kind of the focus and the interest specifically on environmental issues, just really grew over time as I got more involved in different kind of bits of even like volunteering, read more about it and learned about some really like interesting areas of conservation. And my interest in sustainability is quite broad. And so, I think, and then on the business side, it's much more related to the fact that I think I'm someone who's always just kind of had ideas for things, wanted to think of ways to do things a bit differently or change, or find solutions really. And I think that's so much what entrepreneurship is about. It's about seeing something that isn't really working that well and finding a way to do it better, and a way to make it easier for people to do things better, where, you know, people don't always have the time to put all their attention to this stuff. And it's kind of, there really needs to be a responsibility on businesses to make it easier for consumers to do the right thing where they can.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really interesting then. So that kind of mindset was shaped in you from a young age by having very conscious parents that kind of, that you just naturally saw life through that lens of how can we live more sustainably? What good choices can I make? Yeah, that's really cool. And do you think that kind of shaped the decision around what you studied at university? Do you think that kind of came from there and from that kind of way you viewed the world?
Yeah, I think when I was looking at what to do at university, I think there was an element where I was also slightly steered towards just a kind of safe, stable job. And there was an element there of just kind of finding a job that you could do for a long time and you'd kind of be financially secure. You wouldn't have to worry about that. And you do something that would kind of set you up to not have to worry about your job, that kind of thing. And I think that probably came from a parents' classic sort of wanting to make sure their kids are going to be doing okay. So I think, as wanting to, really feel financially independent as well. Sort of that's why I think I kind of went towards economics. I think the idea, initially when I chose the course, was even just to do banking. So I definitely kind of over the course of learning more about what it really means and how economics and sort of social sciences is really about sort of or should very much be about kind of history and how society works and how we all kind of fit together and how it shapes us. And I just found it so interesting and wanted to really explore that more. And it kind of made me realize I didn't really want to do banking at all. That isn't something that I would have been interested in or kind of found much purpose in. And so it was then that I kind of got more of a sense of wanting to find a career that gave me a bit more purpose, and starting in the policy space, really looking at how you can hopefully have a bit of a positive impact there, kind of shaping and influencing policy. But just I think it's kind of been a journey to find the role where I kind of can have the biggest impact and feel kind of quite connected to the impact I'm having.
Yeah, and you were started kind of getting your exposure into the working world and policy while was it between your bachelor's and your master's, or was it once you went into your master's? Talk me through that kind of journey and where your kind of first foray into work came.
So I actually did a sandwich degree. So I had a placement year as my third year, and that was already with the government as a kind of government economist. And so that, I think, gave me a bit of an insight into that. And then that kind of slightly set me up for the job straight after my bachelor's degree. And so I was there in Government Economics Service, as it's called, for about 4 years. And then I left to do the master's degree.
Amazing. And that must have been a really difficult placement to get, first of all. I'd imagine there was a lot of competition for that. What was the kind of process of going forward for a placement like that like?
So if I can remember, it was a while ago now. I think it was your kind of definitely classic application form, interview process. I think it wasn't set up as the full kind of assessment center, but it was for the follow-on job. You had to do full kind of assessment center and different tests to get to the assessment center. So that was more of a graduate scheme setup. But for the placement, it was, I think you had to do a couple of numerical tests, maybe a non-verbal reasoning test, the application form, and then an interview.
Cool. And talk me through what you learned in those years then. What did you manage to get exposure to in that time, and what were you getting involved in?
Yeah, so as an economist in government, you're sort of part of the analytics sort of streams. So it covers a few different things. So there was a lot of essentially building out the evidence base to inform policy decisions. So you're doing lots of analytics and research projects to understand kind of trends in. So I was working in the Department for Work and Pension, so it was looking at trends in the employment figures. And the first job was very much kind of reporting on the sort of economic changes in the labour market. So how employment was changing, unemployment, what's called inactivity. But yeah, it's just a kind of category. Looking at that, but then bigger research projects looking at things like kind of long-term trends in kind of women's employment, different things like that, long-term unemployment, how different factors influence that, and essentially, given the factors that do influence that, how can policy be designed in a better way to support people? And then kind of through those 4 years, I also had a bit of a stint working in what's called private office, which is essentially the different offices that support the ministers of the department, and also the private secretary, who's your equivalent of a CEO of a government department, who's kind of that sort of ongoing civil servant who's heading up the department. And so I worked directly for him for about a bit over a year.
Yeah. And how do you think those kind of early experiences, and especially I imagine all of that exposure to data analytics and trends and pulling insights from those, how much do you think that's kind of influenced the way you run your business today, or has it at all? Yeah,
I think it absolutely has. So because of how you kind of work with that sort of stuff, I already in my career was doing essentially bits and pieces of coding, but specifically for analytics rather than for web development. So I think that has given me a much better understanding of how to do that, even though now I don't do it myself, but I kind of get involved and as much as possible. And in the very early stages was looking at I'd kind of done bits and pieces of the web development as well for the platform. So hugely important, even though I think you kind of look at the kind of career journey and it feels a bit sort of what I've now heard is called like a squiggly career. But yeah, all of it I think has been really valuable to give me the skills that I'm now using to run a business. So how to understand even trends in the market, and how we should be positioning ourselves, the work to kind of do the research around putting together our investor deck, all this sort of stuff. It comes from those original skills that I developed, definitely, and leadership skills, all that kind of stuff, all kind of comes through in those previous roles.
Yeah, like you said, with that squiggly career, sometimes it can feel like you're not on a linear trajectory towards something, but every single experience, every single place you work, you pull something, don't you? And all of that kind of knits together to kind of help you create what you create later on. Amazing. And so 4 years you were at DWP before you moved on. Talk me through that next part of the journey. Why did you choose to move on from there? Where did you go? And amongst all of this happening, you'd had the idea for Ecosy and started working on it, hadn't you? So yeah, where does that thread in?
Yeah, so I had the idea for Ecosy when I was doing my master's, and I suppose there was an element of kind of knowing I wanted to leave the civil service, but not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. Kind of having lots of different ideas, but not having that real strong sense of direction of exactly what it was, where I needed to go next. And so I think for me, the master's was a good way to be doing something that felt really positive and exciting while I was also working that out. And it was while I was kind of meeting loads of brilliant people on the master's course. I think, you know, I was studying at SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies, and it's like a really brilliant university in terms of the people that it attracts. They're all really there, I think, trying to do something positive in the world, really like exposed to lots of these social issues, and, you know, just sparking such interesting debate about how to tackle them. And as someone who's always absolutely loved traveling, I think that, and there was a bit of momentum around it at the time as well. That's when I really started to get involved in that discussion around how we travel and the environmental impact of traveling, because it was one area, I think, for myself that I was sort of slightly overlooking. And I think maybe because holidays are something that people are trying to just like forget all of the stressful things and just let go a bit and just enjoy themselves, which is the right thing to be doing on holiday. It's sometimes, I think, an area where we sort of let go a bit of that feeling of needing to be doing that right thing for the environment. And I think the tourism industry isn't changing fast enough. So that's when I really saw, like, okay, personally, I need to do something here. You know, originally just myself to travel differently and look at how we can do it, reducing flying, finding better ways that kind of lower my own footprint. And when I did that, I just saw that there was nothing out there that was just a really easy to use booking platform where you just do your classic, book your accommodation, book your travel, and you're gonna very easily turn up on the first day of your holiday, get on your transport, get to your destination, and have a really good time. You know, everything's sorted. So yeah, I was honestly quite surprised it didn't exist, and it just felt like real gap in the market.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I mean, yeah, I know from my own personal experience, but it just doesn't exist, does it? And yeah, I like that blend there of, you know, being that combination of being surrounded by some really inspirational people that kind of give you that, you know, just being around them gives you that drive and impetus to think, I feel fired up and I feel like I want to go and do something, combined with your own personal guilt about, well, I love traveling, but I'm not able to do it. I'm not doing it as sustainably as I should. And actually, when I try to, nothing exists to help me. So those kind of three factors coming together. So that's kind of where the idea sparked. And you said, how much did you kind of do on the idea once you'd originally had it, before you then kind of went back to work and then came back to it at a later date?
Yeah, so the original kind of start of the business was really quite sort of, I'd say it was based on the skills I had at the time, what I thought was the right approach. And it was really just a case of kind of trying to grow a bit of an audience around the concept, and start a blog. So started making connections with green businesses in the sector. So kind of linking up with them to kind of do a blog on their property, that kind of thing. But it was very much just kind of a blog and trying to promote that and use it as a way to show how other people could be traveling sustainably as well. But that really wasn't what I wanted to deliver, what I wanted the business to look like. But I think at the time, I didn't like have the network of people around me to really know how to turn it into this, you know, tech company, essentially, because that's not my background at all. And I was just there sort of with the ambition and the sustainability background to be like, I want to make this easy for people. I want to support people to do this. We can really kind of create a community around it. But without that sort of tech background to know how to build the actual bookings platform. And so it was only after my next job, where I was kind of thought I'd also found something that, you know, it was in the climate space. It was, you know, a sort of good job. Sort of, I was in the management team of it's quite a small company, but working in renewable energy and organics recycling, and kind of leading the policy team there to really kind of push for more supportive environment, essentially. And it was a great company to work for, really brilliant people, but there's still that feeling like I wanted to do something differently, or really having that drive to want to do my own thing, I think. And so, kind of mid-COVID, I just quit my job and just, went for it. And I'd met my now CTO. So he has previous experience in fintech startups as a CTO of another fintech startup, and really just knows how to do the product development piece and the web development piece, and could take my idea and what I wanted to create and say, okay, like, this is practically how we can make that happen. So yeah, it's been brilliant. And I think it's so important to have those people around you with the complementary skills to be able to really take something off the ground and make it happen.
Yeah. And how did you meet your co-founder?
So in my flat share, it just happened to be one of my housemates. Yeah. And yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so
Go on, sorry, I think I got a lag.
Well, yeah, there's lots of stuff out there, obviously, where you can kind of say, I've got this idea, let's find a co-founder, and lots of platforms to support that. But yeah, it was really organic, just happened to meet in real life, and kind of be able to bounce ideas off each other with this stuff. So it's really good.
Yeah, that's so good. You're right. There are lots of forums out there to go and meet a co-founder, but when you find someone organically and it just kind of forms like that, that's absolutely brilliant. And how long after meeting him did it kind of become apparent that you could work together in that way, do you think?
Yeah, so initially, I think there was an element of, he kind of inspired me to know how I could do it. And initially, I was even looking at kind of developing my own web development skills, essentially. And I kind of did a bit of a course in one of these no-code development platforms, which is the hosting service that we used for the development of our MVP. So the kind of beta version of our product. And so I did a bit of a course in that, I've played around in it. And I think in terms of the speed of wanting to build the platform, it just worked that actually I kind of got him involved to do some of that web development because he had the experience and the skills. So at first we were working together with him as a freelancer. And then I also knew, like, as a kind of sole founder, that I wanted a co-founding team. I think it makes a lot of sense. It kind of rounds out the skill set for the business, and it just allows you to do so much more, have the like hands-on resource to kind of build what you're creating. And essentially, I think taking on too much of it yourself makes it so much more stressful than it needs to be, when there's so many like brilliant people out there that will kind of align to what you're trying to create, and you can share that journey with. So it started out as a kind of freelance relationship because he really knew how to do it, and then it just worked really well. So he kind of came on board as a co-founder in September, but had already built most of the platform.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. And that sort of gave you an opportunity, I suppose, to kind of test what it was actually like working together before kind of committing to more of a formal co-founding, relationship. Fantastic. And so you quit your job mid-COVID then to do this full time. It was just yourself and your current now co-founder on a freelance basis. What did those first few months look like? What were the challenge, what were you focused on initially? Was it all focused on building out this beta web platform? And what were the main challenges that you kind of faced throughout those first few months?
Yeah, so it was the focus was absolutely on building out the platform and essentially creating a prototype that we'd be able to discuss with potential partners who were kind of your green accommodation providers, also on the transport side. So I think in the first months, a huge amount of what you're doing is discovery, working out actually how to go about what you're wanting to do, because especially for me, and I mean Tim as well, doesn't come from the travel sector. It's learning what exists already, what kind of technology solutions there already are that will fit together to make it happen, and how they kind of practically work, how it makes sense to fit everything together, and also what's the best approach in the early days when you're going to have a clunkier solution to kind of be able to create something interesting for people to still play around with. So yeah, there was a lot of kind of research essentially, and talking to lots of different people, getting their thoughts on what we were doing. And I mean, I kind of started working like pretty much full time a year ago, and that was because I was kind of lucky enough to be awarded a grant from Innovate UK. So that was their Young Innovators Award, and that just meant that I could kind of dedicate the time to it, kind of essentially be paid for a little bit for working out how to make it happen, which was brilliant, and just really gave that freedom to have a bit of funding in the background to support that journey.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. And during those initial discovery phases, were any of the discoveries that you made kind of, did any of those mean that you needed to pivot what you thought you could deliver or what you had been intending to deliver?
I think I probably was a bit overambitious in terms of how long it would take to create the sort of fully integrated bookings platform where you can book directly within the site. And I think I was aiming to do that within a year, which for this kind of product takes a long time to do. So what we've built with our MVP is essentially a trip planning tool. So anyone's able to go on there at the moment, look through our listing of all green accommodations, see what they like, pick something, look at the different route options to get there, which kind of at the moment are still hand curated, and then add it all into an itinerary. And then they still right now book with click-through links to the partner websites. But interestingly, in that kind of discovery phase as well, you see in the travel sector, in lots of cases that can be quite standard. Even booking.com, that kind of has recently added flights into their platform. When you do a search and you do pull up, kind of live availability, they still have a click-through link where you go to the actual provider's website to book that. So it's sort of what we could do as the interim solution while we build out those connections to the live availability and the booking systems.
Cool. So where are you today? It's yourself, Tim, and have you brought anyone else on?
Yeah, so we have hired our first employee, which is really exciting. And that's Hamish, our data scientist. and he's leading the work at the moment, developing our journey planning functionality. So where at the moment we've kind of got different routes suggestions attached to each accommodation, this will be that you'll have, you know, the sort of tech solution routing functionality where someone just types in start address, end address, round trips, everything like that, to work out the best journey. And what that will actually be doing in the background, we'll have our algorithm essentially finding the routes that minimize our users' emissions. And so they'll also have emissions transparency attached to each of the routes. So they'll not only be able to compare across price and journey time, but also the actual climate impact of their trip.
Amazing. So they can really understand the trade-offs they're making around convenience versus emissions, and be able to find that sweet spot for them.
Yeah, exactly. And
amazing.
I think that's putting the information in people's hands so they can make the decisions.
Yeah, because that's what had been missing, I suppose, wasn't it? Is where do you even get that information? So yeah, that's brilliant. And so there's the three of you now then, and the beta app is out there. What does this next year look like? What does 2023 look like for you guys, and what plans and ambitions do you have?
Yeah, so in January, we're being joined by our sort of third co-founder, who's coming on board from the ecotourism industry and is going to be leading more on the kind of marketing side of things, because you know, from January we're going to be shouting about this a bit more. We'll hopefully have the first version of our journey planning functionality built into the platform, so smoother process for our users, which is brilliant. And yeah, really lots around kind of community building and getting people involved in the discussion around green travel. And then on the development side, out until April, we do have this second Innovate UK grant, which is supporting the journey planning functionality. But we're also looking in the next year to develop out the low carbon accommodation booking system, which will essentially build in the real-time availability of all of our accommodations, as well as the per stay emissions for all of them. So again, people will be able to do that comparison and book everything all together in one place on the Ecosy website. So that's the kind of trajectory of development, but big piece of work at the moment as well is doing our first investment round, which is really exciting, and obviously very important for those other steps. So yeah.
Oh, cool. And how have you had I suppose you've been going through the grant funding, but the kind of investment raising VC world, is that completely new for you?
It is for me. It's not for my so for Tim, he's kind of done a bit of this before, which is very helpful, obviously. And for this first round, we're just doing a kind of smaller pre-seed round. So looking just at kind of angel investors right now. I think obviously I thought we're all kind of aware that it's a challenging economic environment, but really excited about this and about what we're building. So yeah, it's a very exciting time.
Fantastic. And yeah, it is a challenging market, but I think, anecdotally, that what I've been hearing from people is that actually for earlier stage startups, it's not quite so challenging, and especially those that are in a space like the one that you're in, where there is a lot of consumer demand for it. Hopefully you'll be in a strong position. So it sounds like a really exciting year ahead then. So bedding your data scientist in so that they can start working on that kind of journey planning and the emissions data behind the journey, that they can share with people, that kind of transparent emissions data, having the new co-founder come on board and starting a real big marketing drive, and then building out the accommodation booking part of the platform as well. That sounds like an amazing year. Cool.
Yeah.
And of course the funding raise. So if anyone's watching this then that is involved in the investment space, in touch with Rebecca, doing 3 quickfire questions with people. So the first one is, what would be your top piece of advice for someone that was thinking about setting up their own business?
So for me, it's absolutely about the people you do it with. So I think when you have an idea, there's definitely a kind of discovery phase that I do think you kind of want to do on your own to like understand really what it is that you want to create and find that passion for it as well, because you have to absolutely love what you're doing to put in the work that it takes. But having those right people around you, finding people that you work really well with, you get on with and have fun with, and kind of build out the skill set that you need. It's really critical, I think.
Amazing. And second question, which business or sustainability role model do you wish that you could have just 1 hour with?
So for me, it's a business and sustainability role model. So I'd say Yvon Chouinard from, who founded Patagonia. I think how he's how he started the business is really brilliant, sort of from that sort of place of passion for something. And then over the years and that journey to kind of look at the impact the business has on the environment, really understand their own supply chain and kind of constantly be scrutinizing themselves and the impact they're having. I think all businesses should be doing that. All of us can kind of look at how we have that impact, and particularly in our kind of business life, the impact that we're having. I think it's so important, and now as well that they've kind of made the planet their kind of whole shareholder. So brilliant. That would be amazing.
Yeah, he really has been such a pioneer for how you can run a business consciously. And a great role model. Perfect. And what is one quick lifestyle change that you would recommend to listeners to help them live more sustainably?
I'm just gonna be very biased here and say, look at your travel. I mean, it's obviously something so many of us love traveling, love like that cultural exchange. And I don't think it's something that we should ever have to stop doing, but there's different ways that we can do it. And I think really kind of adventurous and exciting ways that we can travel a bit differently and improve our impact. So looking at if some of the trips that you're doing in the next year you could take by coach or ferry or train instead of flying. And where I think lots of us, particularly millennials, are very frequent flyers, even just swapping 1 or 2 of those trips or one of those trips. And for the more diehard environmentalists, maybe stopping flying for a bit while the aviation industry sorts itself out.
No, I like that. And you can use the Ecosy Travel website to plan those journeys now, I guess.
Yeah, brilliant.
A little plug for you. Perfect. And whilst we were chatting, we did actually have one question come in from one of the listeners. So I'm just going to go back to that before we finish off, if you don't mind. But somebody wanted to know about how instrumental Innovate UK was for helping you get started and grow, and about what support they have offered you outside of the grant itself. Did you get any kind of additional support in helping to grow the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the Young Innovators Award, I mean, it's a very small grant actually in terms of funding. And the big kind of selling point there is that additional support. So I had a weekly business mentor who was also putting me in touch with a whole network of support. There were webinars and kind of meetings as well with that whole like cohort of other entrepreneurs that were kind of in the same boat. So I think, that was absolutely brilliant. And with this idea as well, I think because it is a very complicated thing to do. I would say it's more challenging than I'd probably initially thought. I don't think without that funding and that sort of added security for definitely a risky thing to be doing, that I would have been able to kind of go ahead and start the business. So yeah, Innovate UK has been brilliant, and having access to that kind of funding is great.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was really helpful. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for coming in and sharing your journey with us. I've really appreciated it. It sounds like, first of all, the idea that you've had is amazing. Just on a personal level, it's something I would absolutely use. So thank you for bringing it to life. And then thank you for sharing that journey with us. And yeah, sounds like you've got a really exciting 2023 ahead. So wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be part of this series. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.